Hello and welcome back to Albert Recaps Z Nation. This week we're covering Season 2, Episode 14, Day 1. And this episode might be the best representative of my feelings about this entire season in a nutshell. Because, on the one hand, I really enjoyed it, but on the other hand, I was a little bit annoyed that it didn't further the plot very much at all. Which, those of you who know how I felt about this season, it seems like there has been so much filler, and filler that I'm not complaining about a lot of the great episodes like Down the Mississippi or even Roswell and some of the really fun stuff we've done that's kind of been diversions, but I felt like so much of it could have moved us forward a little bit, and this is really, a great, fun episode where we go back. It's called Day 1 because we're going back to the beginning of the zombie apocalypse in flashback form, which I don't think that's the best way it could have been done. And since I'm giving my opinion here, you're welcome to disagree with me. I would have liked to see it done similar to how the second to the last episode of the previous season was, or maybe it was the very last episode, where we saw Dr. Kurian, we saw him going around, extracting from people, and it wasn't like, we didn't have to go to his eyes and him being like, I remember, and then cut to what he's remembering. Like, I think we're smart enough as an audience to either just have the flashbacks and understand that, yes, this happened before the zombie apocalypse, because here nobody knows what's going on, and that's crazy. But I really did enjoy going back to a lot of these scenes. Some of it was unnecessary, maybe all of it was technically unnecessary, but it was neat to see these people in their pre-zombie state. I don't remember exactly which order they went in, so I'm going to go in the order I remember. Starting off with Warren, who we already know quite a bit about her. She's in the National Guard, and, well, no, I take that back. We're going to start off with Citizen Z, who's the only guy who didn't get I remember the past, and then flashback. We opened directly on Citizen Z being led into an interrogation room, which was a really great moment, because you don't know it's him at first. You have a lot of, you see the guy in handcuffs, you see orange jumpsuit, you see kind of the longer hair, and you're thinking, maybe this is Murphy, maybe it's somebody else, but when you see it, like, seeing that it's Citizen Z is just a shock. It's like, oh, he was in, what? What happened here? And, he's obviously, the way they set it up is he's this type of, sort of, hacktivist guy that we've seen quite a bit of in the past, where it seems like he's hacked into government computers, released a lot of sensitive information that they didn't want released, and they're sort of talking back and forth about a plea bargain, and he's adamant that he is not going to plead guilty, which I think is really a cool look into his character, because they would let him off the hook at least quite a bit if he would just plea down, and he's person of principle. He says, no, I ain't pleading down. I stand by what I did. I did the right thing, and I'm not pleading guilty. And then the next guy comes into the picture, and he sends, the lawyer dude out of the room, and he says, hey, man, you don't got to plead guilty, but I've got an offer for you to go up to Camp Northern Light, and you need to help us out with this. And he hands him a piece of paper and says, you can't show this to your lawyer, but this is what we need help with. Citizen Z opens up the piece of paper, and maybe it was really cheesy in a way, but his reaction to it was actually pretty believable, because he's like, what is this? Is this code? And the guy's just like, And the guy just wrote zombies on a piece of paper, which I'm just imagining like, okay, I need to get this guy on my side. How do I convince him? I'll write zombies on a piece of paper. Clearly that will get him to come over to our side. And apparently it did. But it was a little bit, I think, of unintentional humor of just seeing the word just scrawled out. Not like, here's some technical papers or whatever that describe the spread of the virus, and you can put it together because you're a smart guy. It's just a piece of paper with the word zombies on it. Which again, it was fine. It got the point across, and the technical papers might have been a little bit obtuse. If you want the audience to be able to follow along, I mean, they know the one word zombies. Otherwise, you'd have to cut together some stuff and be like, it spreads by bites and infection, and have like a little montage of flashing in. This was simpler, obviously. But then we get, of course, the group is still walking to California, and then we get into our big flashback parade of, again, people going, I remember. And then we cut to Roberta Warren in her pre-zombie state as a National Guard's leader of some kind, which I liked how casual it all was. It was so... I mean, going back to the end of season 1, when we had that flashback with Dr. Curian, to see the world as it was, to see crowds of people in cities that are all, up and standing and not overrun with horrified people screaming around. That was really, really this weird, it's a perspective shift after you've been sunk into the show for so long. And we get her, she's just dealing with her everyday stuff. She's got her rowdy, guys that she's in command with. I'm watching the game way too loudly. And she's on the phone, saying, hey, what's, what do you guys want? What are you guys talking about? We're supposed to be moving vehicles. It's obvious that, especially as the scene progresses, that the zombie outbreak is already taking place, and the government is trying to get assets in position to quell it, but it's happening too late, because as she's talking on the phone, or right after she gets off talking on the phone, there's a crash, ambulance siren going out right outside the door. She goes outside. There's nobody in the ambulance, in the driver part of the ambulance, and she goes and she looks and, is looking around, and she finds a zombie in the back on a stretcher, and, looks at it, and she's like, what's going on? She has a sort of natural reaction that's, hey, this guy needs some help or something. I don't quite understand, but, so she goes and tries to call 911, but by the time that she does, some other zombies have slipped in the building behind her and have attacked her whole squad, and she starts getting run over by these zombies who are thirsting for her brain. And she's a little bit slow on the uptake. She doesn't do the whole, like, these are zombies, I will kill them thing. She waits a little bit, tries to reason with them, and then eventually, maybe a little too quickly for my taste as far as how she processed what was going on, but she just shoots him in the head. And it's neat to see, you go back and you see how these people were in their lives before, and it's a different context, but you kind of see that they're basically the same people, especially in her case. Like, she is a leader, she is dealing with a bunch of rowdy idiots, and she is willing to do what has to be done, instantly. She's quick decision making. So that sort of gave you a really good insight into her. The next one I remember was Doc. And Doc, again, going back to what I said before, that he's still Doc. It's not like he's some radically different person. He's still the sort of hippie guy. He's still a little bit of a stoner. But he's a psychiatrist, which I thought, or a psychologist. I don't know which one. Anyway, he talks to people who have mental problems, and, a therapist, let's call him. Because it doesn't seem like he was dealing with somebody who was really radically having issues, but just, giving advice and whatnot. He starts off talking to this guy who's trying to kick this addiction, and he's like, okay, and he, pulls a bag of pills off of the shelf where they were just sitting out for anybody to see, puts that in his pocket, trigger. That wouldn't be cool. He's telling him, yeah, I've been clean for 5 years now. And the guy's like, I can't imagine being clean for 5 years. It's been 3 days for me. But we do, and then he hears a crash down the hall, and he sees that one of his colleagues is being attacked by, and your initial assumption, because you've already seen Roberta Warren's thing, your initial assumption is this is the zombie. He's gonna deal with the zombie. But no, it's a crazed patient, which was a great fake out. This guy who's just found out that his wife's cheating on him, and he's just going crazy. And we see Doc, the mellow, chill dude that he is, instantly deal with the situation and like grab the guy, put him in like an arm lock of some kind, shove him up against the wall, and then talk him down. He puts him up against the wall. He's like, "Hey man, yeah, I know it's okay. You know, you need to calm down. You know, it's not her fault. She's gonna help you out with that." And like the guy like does calm down and like gives him a hug, and he's like, "All right, that's cool." And he goes back to his office, and then we get the real zombie attack. Then we are at the actual Doc is dealing with zombies now, and it's funny because we saw most of the time you would see, you know, sort of the zombies just barely in the background as they're going to do something. The zombies slip into the door or go wherever. So zombie had slipped into his office and was on top of his patient, like, rah, rah, rah. And Doc's immediate reaction is, "Whoa, I'll give you all some privacy here." And they for Doc, I loved it because they had like a great moment where he sits there and he thinks, he's like, "Wait a minute. This guy didn't tell me anything about being gay. How's he gonna like start off with, you know, making out with this guy in my office?" And then he thinks about it some more. He's like, "That's a zombie," which was, I love that. There is probably an argument to be made that was a big leap in logic, but I really, the thing we start to see in this flashback is that this is a world, as we have seen already, that knows what zombies are. And they don't try to retcon that and be like, everybody's like, "What are these undead things coming after us?" Like, everybody knows the word zombie. Everybody knows how to deal with the zombie. So he goes into the room, like, tries to save his patient. This patient's already turned. So he ends up, like, shoving both zombies out and getting his golf club and, you know, saying, "All right, I gotta deal with this." And there's a great, you know, sort of him standing at the door and looking outside and everything, which I think was a special effects shot, because it's one of those things where like someone printed the word exit and put it on the door, and I don't think it was actually an exit, but he opens it and sees a shot of something outside, people running by, and he's like, "All right," and he like runs out into it. And that was great to see, because it was, you know, there's this question I think that you might have if you know of Doc as a character and you want to approach it from a logical standpoint as much as you can with Z Nation. You say, okay, this guy who's sort of a hippie, stoner, kind of laid-back dude, how is he still alive in the zombie apocalypse? And seeing that moment of him dealing with that patient, and just, I mean, he's familiar with physical violence, if he has to be, and is willing to switch that on without switching off his Doc personality, and also seeing his quick thinking where he just kind of runs through and he's like, "All right, yeah, that's a zombie." That gives you a great insight into what this guy's deal is and how he's still alive in this apocalypse. Because logically, you would think it doesn't make sense, but then you realize, oh, there's more to this guy than just the hippie stoner. He's still a fighter. He's still quick on his feet. He knows what he's doing. So I really enjoyed that flashback. The next flashback, in the order that I'm getting to them, was Addie. And she is at a hockey game cheering on the hockey team when the zombie outbreak breaks out. And with that one, there wasn't too much really of note, except that we see her and Mac kind of meet up together on, you know, sort of day one of the zombie apocalypse, as we know that they did. I didn't love the Addie sequence because we already got an Addie flashback in season 1, and I love that episode. I know many of y'all hate Addie and Mac's relationship, and that episode in particular. I enjoyed them being together, and I absolutely love that particular episode. I always bought into their chemistry, and seeing them get together for the first time outside of that incident, because in season 1, as we know, she had that flashback. She kind of had repressed the memory of killing her mom, and my assumption there was that, you know, she was wherever, she got holed up with her mom in the basement, she had to kill her, and then Max showed up. And adding on this extra sort of tacked on scene where she's like at a hockey game and then says to Mac, "Oh, I have to go home." It fits in the chronology. I mean, it still works, but it didn't work with the way my mind thought it would have worked. I kind of would have liked to see him show up after she killed her mom, but I understand, you know, I'm not angry about that or anything. This was maybe one of the weaker scenes for me, though. Next up is Vasquez, which we've already sort of in similar mode to Addy, although we haven't seen his flashback yet, but we knew where he was at the beginning of the zombie apocalypse because he tells us earlier in the season his wife and daughter had just died. That's basically when the apocalypse kicked off, is, after El Scorpion killed him. And his scene, again, a lot of this is technically padding, right? Because it doesn't put us forward. I mean, we already know that everybody's dead. We already know how these characters turned out. But his scene might have been one of the most tension-filled for me because I realized as he's there at the funeral home, like looking at the casket of his daughter and his wife, and you know what's going to happen. You know that the dead rise. You know how much grief he's already in, and to deal with him, like, we're waiting for them to come back to life, and then there's this great, like, Edgar Allan Poe moment where they're scratching at the inside of the casket, and he goes, like, yelling for the funeral director, like, you got rats in here or what? And like, not sure how to deal with it. And then I think the funeral director comes in and he's a zombie and he kills him. That's irrelevant, because then the wife and daughter do bust out of their casket and start crawling towards him. And his reaction, acting wise, felt like it was slightly overdone. Maybe it's difficult to say. I don't want to be too critical of the acting in this show, but it seemed like a little bit over the top. But at the same time, I was on board. I was like, I'm with you, man. Like, this is horrifying. You just dealt with them dying, and now they come back as these demon monster zombie things. This is not cool. Yeah, this is not going to help you with your grieving process. And so for me, that was maybe one of the most chilling scenes. I wasn't expecting, because, of course, we're all sitting here saying, get to Murphy and get to 10K, get to Murphy, get to 10K, get to Murphy, get to 10K. And Vasquez was just sort of like, oh, fine, let's get this over with for me. And then Vasquez thing showed up, and I was like, oh, okay, that was actually surprisingly effective. And then we do get to 10K, which I would have liked to seen something different with his segments, but we didn't. We got what we got. It's nothing really all that interesting. It's 10K fishing in the mountains. His hair's a little different. He looks a little bit less, hardened to the apocalypse, and zombies show up, and he's running through the woods, kind of dealing with them. Not as seasoned as we see him later on in the show, to the point where he knocks himself out on a tree, like Roadrunner style or something. That was kind of ridiculous. He was, running away from the zombies and just like, thonk, hits. And the zombies, the worst part of that was the zombies don't come after him. They're just like, whoa, we're going on. Like, they didn't see him or something. Zombies are supposed to know where living flesh is, guys. They have some kind of psychic thing. I don't understand how it works, but it's not smell, and it's something. Anyway, so they run right on past him. They're all full of arrows, which I thought was interesting as sort of a story that we see but we don't see, kind of a story that's told just by what you can piece together from the information in the scene. Nobody says anything about it, because you have all of these zombies that are full of arrows, but they're all arrows in the torso. And then later on, when 10K and his dad are running away from the zombies, we see the guy with the bow, who is now zombified. And I kind of liked that sort of implication of story, that this guy was out hunting and zombies came through and he tried to attack him or whatever, and he shot them and was obviously a decent shot and filled several of them up with arrows before he finally got bit himself, but was not willing or able to take the headshot. And so you kind of got like a compressed little story in just those images of those guys full of arrows, and then the guy with the bow showing up, zombified himself. 10K picks up his gun, which I didn't need to see that. I didn't need to see it on day one, especially. Like, I would have been fine if he had some different gun, but we've got time limitations, and who knows what they're doing with him in the future. So we see him get his gun. It's just laying on the forest floor. His dad says, "Get the gun," and he gets it, and there's like a short little slow-mo shot, and yay, now 10K has the gun. I really, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to say more about that. It would have been nice to see something I mean, that gun is a part of his character. The idea that he just picked it up off the ground kind of bugs me. It could have been better. It could have been something, that he had to, his dad gave to him, or that he had for a long time before the zombie apocalypse. Something that had emotional significance other than it's just a gun. Because, I mean, from a storytelling technique, that seems like it would be a really good thing to do. But what do I know? Moving forward to Murphy, that was the one I was looking forward to. And like 10K, I was a little bit disappointed. Not like I hated this, but it didn't have as much punch as I wanted. But we do see Murphy in his pre-zombie days, in prison, dealing cards, and man, the actor that plays him, I think his name's Keith Allen, is so good in all of his many incarnations of the Murphy. And, him just sitting there dealing cards and, shooting the bull with the prisoners was absolutely wonderful. I mean, I really had a lot of fun with that scene, with just the dialogue and the way it was written, all the, sort of him telling the guys what he was in for, and the guys, the one guy who's being tried for attempted murder is looking at him, because he is in for postal fraud, and he says, "How can I trust you to play an honest game?" He's like, "Well, just assume that it isn't, and you'll be fine." Which I thought was an awesome line. But I also really did like the further confirmation that Murphy is in for postal fraud, because I know some other Z Nation fans, including one of the other recap shows that I listen to so I can keep up on the competition, they think that Murphy's in for more. And I have always loved the idea that he wasn't. That he was never a big bad guy, hardened criminal, anything. He was always this kind of a Weasley character. And because that plays into him. That plays into his, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be your stupid messiah. Let me go home or die or something. I'm sick of this. He's not a hero. He's not a villain either. He's just a guy. And that's the great thing about the Murphy character, is that he's just a guy. He's self-centered, and he does bad things, and then he does good things, but he's neither hero nor villain in any of these circumstances. He just wants out. And after we get out of his flashback, when, zombies show up and he runs away, the details of that did not interest me. But we do get out of his flashback, and he has a great scene with Warren where he says this stuff. He says, I want to be done. Can I be done, please? If you were my friend, you would let me go. And she has that great response. She looks at him, she says, "But I'm not your friend." And she doesn't say it in a mean way. She doesn't say it in a hard way. You can tell that she cares about him on some level, but she's being brutally honest. And she's saying, "Listen, you're coming with me, and I'm keeping my promise that I made to Garnett, that we were going to get out of this, and that we were going to get you to California and find some hope for the world." And that was, I think, maybe the best scene especially as far as moving the story forward, because that scene, that dynamic between Warren and Murphy is really, I think, right now the heart of the show. That Warren is pushing forward and Murphy is pulling back, and Warren's stronger for now, but Murphy is, he's getting fed up with it. He's getting to the point where he doesn't want to deal with this anymore. And of all the things that I've said haven't been done well enough over the season, I think we really have gotten a sense that Murphy is just wearing out. He was having fun with it to begin with, but I think more than anything, he's just sick of it. It's maybe even psychological, that's why he hasn't been controlling the zombies as much anymore. It's just because he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to be in their heads. He doesn't want to understand them. He doesn't want to do anything but escape. And at this point, that basically means die. Although I don't think he's quite to the point where he's going to commit suicide or run into a trap purposely, but he really doesn't want to be the hero. But he has to be, because he's all they've got. And so they find the location that Citizen Z had told them to go to, where the CDC was having their final hole-up They're of course they're in California by now. They have their little Z Nation nods to, yeah, this used to be Disney World, and a garbage dump blown up by the nuke. They have their moment where they look off and they're like, there's the ocean, and it's, then they cut to a shot of the ocean, which actually was pretty well composited because they cut in some of those Washington pines in the shot. Either they were in the shot initially or they composited those. It looked like a composite job, but it was decent. And it kind of made it look like they were sort of in the same spot, even if you can pick out how the special effect was done. But they get to this weird chateau, not chateau, well, that's what I thought of initially, but it's sort of like a roadside cafe type of a thing. And you almost let me get to the end before I talked about Citizen Z, because finally, not just in the flashback, but Citizen Z is back. He's doing his Citizen Z thing. Somebody's trying to hack him, but they can't hack him because he's Citizen Z, son. What? Sit down with your hacker self. But he realizes that after he traces back what's been going on, that they have been sort of following the group. And so whoever is responsible for this hack-in that we don't know yet, they are controlling, they know where Murphy is too. And so with that bit of information, we have Warren and Vasquez head into the sort of little roadside diner thing, I think is what it is, basically. And they're like, maybe this is another base that has like a underground component or whatever, which I thought was a great hand wave. Because last season, the CDC building was like a shed, and they're like, here's an elevator that goes all the way down into this awesome stuff. And they kind of lampshaded that a little bit. But Warren and Garnett go in. Not Garnett. I'm sorry. No, he's still dead, guys. And we didn't get to see him in the flashback either, which I would have liked. I would have liked to see Warren see Garnett in the flashback. I probably couldn't get the actor back, which is fine. It's been over a whole season since he died, but still kind of a bummer. But Warren and Vasquez go in, and there's a sweet little old lady at the counter, and she's like, hi, folks, can I get y'all anything? And Vasquez sees right through that act, because they've got their firearms up, and he's like, you want to not have that gun that you have behind the counter? And so she picks up the little dinky Derringer, like 2-barrel Derringer, that little old lady would carry in her purse, if she's a cool little old lady, I mean, and puts it on the counter and kind of smiles. And then the camera pans down, and we see that she has like a giant automatic shotgun, like still behind the counter that she could grab if she wants to. And then that's it. And you're like, to be continued. Boom, boom, boom. And listen, like I said, plot-wise, I've got some problems with this. Doesn't advance the story a lot. But it was neat to see the flashbacks. And going forward, I'm really excited to see, because if you'll remember at the end of my review of the previous episode, I was like, man, we got rid of the zeros already. Like, that plot point's just done. Or that seemed kind of a waste. Somehow in my mind, it didn't click over completely that a lot of these zeros got injected with the Murphy juice. And the Murphy juice makes you not be able to die from zombie bites. And I kind of just assumed, I think partly because they turned into like Murphy blood craving things, that they were kind of like still zombified, but no, because in the flash forward for the next episode, we see Muerte, is that her name? Anyway, the Queen of the Dead lady show up, and she's like, what's going on? And obviously she still has some use of her faculties as a human being, despite the fact that she's one of these hybrid half zombie, half human things, half Murphys. I don't even know what they are. But we're bringing all that back around. It is all coming to a conclusion, and so one of my criticisms of the previous episode is invalid, which I'm excited about. I'm glad we got rid of El Scorpion, but that moved the plot forward into having this character, and I'm really excited to see where we're going for the season finale, because it is going to be a big one. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff crammed together into this finale. We're going to probably have a giant cliffhanger like we did in season 1, and then we're going to have to wait like a year and a half for them to make another season. Come on, Sci-Fi, crank these out faster. I mean, you're making them for $2 a piece. Spend the $2 again, and I'm being facetious, obviously. I know that there's investment and timing and everything is very important, but I would like to see this season 3 come out a little more quickly than season 2 did on the heels of season 1. And I'd like to see it be shorter again, personally, although I'll give more of those thoughts at the end of this season. But yes, I really enjoyed this episode. If I was going to grade it, which I haven't been doing lately, but I'd give it, like an A-, B+ area grading. Definitely really, really solid, fun episode, and leading into a really, really solid, hopefully fun season finale. So stay tuned for that.